Hey guys, welcome back. So, you all know the saying, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, right? Everybody knows you need to practice to improve on your instrument, but rarely do I hear anyone talking about how to practice. So today I thought it'd be fun to give you some advice that I really wish I would have gotten when I was learning how to play the guitar. Here are 5 common practice mistakes. People quit playing the guitar every day because they hit a wall, decide they must have no talent, and give up. But more often than not, their lack of progress is due to poor and aimless practicing habits, not because, their hands are too small, or they lack talent, or whatever other excuses we tell ourselves. So here are 5 common practice mistakes that I really wish I knew when I was learning guitar. Slowing down in music is equivalent to zooming in on a painting. It allows you to see finer detail. And it's true that actually, if you play something very slow, it might actually sound worse because it highlights and exposes your weaknesses. But if we're serious about improving on the guitar, which I hope you are, then step number 1 is exposing our greatest weaknesses so that we can fix them. When I was learning electric guitar, I was so guilty of this first mistake of playing too fast. I used to just loop the same riff or song again and again 1,000 times at the same speed. And I thought it was helping me, but in fact, all it did was ingrain bad habits into my muscle memory and probably annoy the hell out of my freshman year roommate. I remember when I was 17, I was obsessed with this one technique called sweep picking. It's basically like an ascending arpeggio done in one clean motion. And I tried that for countless hours, but I always practiced it at that exact same speed. And let's just say it didn't go well. So if you're like I was and are tempted to always play fast, the simplest cure is to just get a metronome. It is the easiest way to keep yourself in time. There's never been an easier time to use one as well because there's dozens of free apps. I use one called Pro Metronome on my phone, and you can start by just turning it on to something like 60 BPM, 1 note per second, and this will force you to play slower. The other reason you need to make the metronome your buddy is because humans aren't born with good rhythm. It's a learned skill. And so the fingers by themselves want to rush or slow down depending on how difficult something is. And the metronome can be our robotic friend who kindly reminds us where the real beat is. So here is how I should have learned how to sweep pick when I was 17. Turn on the metronome at something very slow. 60 BPM is always a good start. Each click is 1 note. That might seem very slow, but it's a luxury to play this slow because I have time to think in between the notes. Where's my finger going next? Here comes my pinky, my ring finger, bar, middle, index, pinky. When we're playing fast, we have no time to think about those things. They just have to be there. So now that I'm playing this slow, I can focus on a few things. The first is, can I actually match each note with the metronome perfectly? Very often I hear something like that when I first show students a metronome. I was actually rushing. Rarely do people go too slow, they almost always rush. So I was ahead of the beat. Okay, I'll try to land on the other side of the beat. I'll go slower. Okay, now I'm a little bit behind. Now let's see if I can split the difference and land right with the metronome. Okay, that time I got it. So that's the type of practice that really would have helped me learn how to sweep pick at an early stage. Now, of course, this has to go faster eventually. So the next thing I can do is bump up the tempo to, say, 75. So we can bump it up in increments of 15 beats per minute. And we decide to move up when it gets very easy, when we know we can do it every single time correctly. So now here's 75. A little faster, right? And once that feels easy, I can bump it up 15 again. And at each stage, I will get comfortable with that tempo and gradually move up until I find a tempo where it's difficult and I start playing in a sloppy way again. Then I can refine, move up. Eventually, I reach my desired tempo. Imagine you're ironing a wrinkly shirt, and you get through the whole thing, and when you're done, you notice there's still a wrinkle in the middle. And rather than just going right to that spot and getting the wrinkle out, you do the entire shirt again, hoping that when you pass that spot, it comes out this time. That would be a gigantic waste of time, right? But unfortunately, this is exactly how most people practice. They play entire songs, knowing full well that there are spots that still have wrinkles or didn't go well, right? Problem spots. And rather than isolating those moments and working on them, they get to the end and they say, well, I guess I'll try the whole thing again, praying that it'll go well this time. So to fix this bad habit, we have to learn the difference between practice mode and performance mode. Practice mode is when we play through a piece until we make a mistake, and then we stop and we work on that moment and we try to figure out what went wrong. We work on it very slowly, repeating it many times until it's easy. Mistake, right? The scale wasn't clean. So now I could stop and say, okay, I'm in practice mode, so I need to actually work on this bit. And this is where I could break out my metronome, work through it slowly, and gradually speed it up in increments of 15 BPM until I feel comfortable to give it a run in the actual piece. Better. Performance mode, on the other hand, is when we play through a song as if we're on stage playing for an audience. Obviously, there were several mistakes in there, but I didn't let them stop me, and I kept going as if I was in a performance. The point of performance mode is to simulate the real experience of performing, to see how the piece would go in public, and to also ensure that we don't accidentally stop just because of one mistake. So from now on, you must know which mode you're in at all times. So you can ask yourself these questions when you sit down. Am I just trying to play through this piece for fun? Then performance mode is great. You could say, am I trying to see how this would go if I was to play in a concert tomorrow? Performance mode again. However, if you're trying to actually improve the song, then you have to be in practice mode. To practice well, we need to set easily achievable goals that can actually be achieved in one sitting. If we make goals too big, like become a legendary guitar player, there's no way we can accomplish that, and where do we even begin, right? It's too ambiguous. So ask yourself this question instead. What am I struggling with? The answer could be, if you're an electric guitar player, this guitar solo from a song by Metallica. Or if you're a classical guitarist, it could be Capriccio Arabe by Francisco Tárrega. Now we're on to something. So let's say we picked Capriccio Arabe by Tárrega as our weak song that we want to improve. We could start from the beginning and just keep playing until we hit a rough patch. And let's say the rough patch happened around measure 14, like this. Problem. The slur wasn't very audible. The hammer-on wasn't very audible. So we could say, okay, stop everything. let's fix this. There's a problem. Now we can say, well, what if I just practice the slur by itself? I think that's the issue. So you could just drill the slur for a while, thinking about how to make a better slur. Turns out if your elbow is in, the pinky is stronger. That's one thing that might help. Another complication here is that your index finger has a giant stretch. You have to reach to the 7th fret of the 5th string and hammer on with your pinky to the 12th. So it helps to divide the reach between the fingers and straighten the pinky a little bit to make the reach easier. So those are things you could discover while practicing very slow. And once you think it's a bit better, you could plug it back in. So far we've diagnosed the problem. The hammer-on is weak. We've worked on slowly repeating it to fix it. Next step is backing up a bit and giving it a running start to see if it's fixed. That sounded good that time. If it doesn't sound good, you need to go back to step 2, where you work on that bit very slowly, figuring out what's the problem, how can I fix it? Okay, so in short, goal-oriented practicing is when you diagnose a problem, then you isolate that moment and repeat it very slowly, there's no such thing as too slow, until that moment feels easy. Then you give it a running start to try it in context, and if it goes well, great, you're done. If it doesn't sound good still, you need to go back to step 2 and work at it very slowly, analyzing, what's the problem here? Maybe if I go slower, maybe if I change the rhythm. Analyze it until you think it's easier, plug it back in to see if it works. Keep doing this until the problem goes away. And lastly, most guitarists lack structure in their practice routine. So I think you should get yourself a practice journal. This is mine. I think you should go buy a very beautiful, nice journal that is designated as your music book and nothing else. So in other words, don't be writing, your grocery list and doodles in here. This is your sacred music book and that's all. So let's talk about how to use our practice journal effectively. Open to the first blank page and write the date in the top left corner. And when we practice, we're going to log exactly what we do and how long we do each thing. So now I'm going to give you my template of how I structure my practice routine for the most progress. I always start with a warm-up, then I go on to work on some piece that needs improvement, and then lastly, I always end by reviewing songs that I already know, that I just want to play for either enjoyment or just to make sure that I still have them in my fingers. March 24th, 2020. Warm-up. Spider crawl, chromatic scale, string crossing exercise with alternation in the right hand. 10 minutes total. By the way, if you're not warming up before you play your songs, you're doing yourself a disservice. Please do check out my video on warming up. I did a whole video talking about exercises and the purpose of warming up. It'll revolutionize your playing. So check that out in the description below. Next, we can jump to a song that needs improvement. Let's imagine we use the example from today, Capriccio Arabe by Francisco Tárrega. There was a moment in measure 14 where that high E hammer-on was no good. So if I were to log that moment, it would say something like, played through Capriccio Arabe, measure 14 needs work. I isolated the high E slur, playing it very slow many times. Then I would put an asterisk every time I make a discovery. Asterisk. Discovered that if my elbow is in, my pinky hammer-ons are stronger. And then lastly, you could say review of repertoire. So you could play through songs that you already know and like for a mixture of enjoyment and a little bit of trial and error to see if any of the pieces need to be touched up at all. But that part can also be just a way to end on a positive note and remind yourself that we're making music after all, and it's a beautiful thing. Okay, so there we have it. 5 common practice mistakes that I really wish I knew when I was younger, and now you know them, so you can try to avoid those bad habits. And by the way, I want to emphasize that I still fall into these bad habits constantly. They're hard to avoid. It takes patience and discipline to practice well. But the reward for good practice is endless potential for your playing. So stick with it and good luck. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful. Please do subscribe if you haven't already to see more guitar tips in the future, and we'll see you next time.